I manage a consulting firm in Singapore. Last month, an American CEO walked into our boardroom and immediately started calling everyone by their first names. My 60-year-old senior partner, who has Dr. Chairman on his business card, got hit with, "Hey, Robert, nice to meet you, buddy." The American explained that in Silicon Valley, they abolished all titles because hierarchies stifle innovation. He'd read a Harvard Business Review article about flat organizations improving productivity by 18%. So clearly, this was the scientifically superior approach. When our chairman gently mentioned that he preferred Dr. Tan, the CEO doubled down. He launched into a story about how Steve Jobs famously worked on a first-name basis with janitors and how this democratization of the workplace was the secret to Apple's success. Dr. Tan smiled, nodded, "Aye," and later told me the partnership was off. My cousin works at a 5-star hotel in Tokyo. An American executive checked in for a week of meetings and immediately asked the concierge where he could find the best steakhouse. When told about an incredible Wagyu restaurant, she dismissed it. She said she'd read that business dinners should focus on networking, not food. And Americans close deals faster because they don't waste 3 hours at restaurants in America. Power lunches last 45 minutes maximum, she explained. And anyone spending longer is clearly not optimizing their schedule. She insisted on booking conference rooms instead, with sandwich platters. Her Japanese clients canceled every meeting after the first day. I work at a manufacturing facility in Vietnam. An American VP visited to discuss a partnership. During the factory tour, kept saying this is exactly like our plant in Ohio, while pointing out things that were completely different. Our assembly line ran left to right because of how the building's power system was designed. He insisted that all modern factories run right to a left because of ergonomic studies from the 1960s. And we'd probably see a 15% efficiency gain if we restructured. When I mentioned we'd tried that layout and it didn't work with our infrastructure, suggested we hadn't implemented it correctly. He pulled up a YouTube video of a Ford plant and started comparing it, shot by shot, to our facility. My brother runs a trading company in Seoul. An American CEO arrived for negotiations and walked into the conference room ahead of his own team and our senior executives. He grabbed the center seat at the table without waiting for anyone. In Korea, seating follows strict protocols based on rank and the host-guest relationship. The head seat goes to the most senior person from the hosting company, with guests seated in order of their hierarchy. This guy just planted himself in what was meant for our 65-year-old chairman and started unpacking his laptop. My brother quietly suggested a different seat. The American said modern businesses don't have assigned seating because it reinforces outdated power structures. He'd read a McKinsey study proving that flexible seating arrangements increase collaborative output by 22%. He suggested we should try hot desking throughout the building while we were at it. I work at a tech startup in Bangalore. An American investor came to discuss funding. During our presentation, he interrupted our CTO mid-sentence to ask a question. In India, business culture blends respect for hierarchy with warm interaction, but you still wait for senior people to finish speaking. Our CTO was explaining a critical technical architecture decision. The investor cut in with quick question, "Have you considered just using AWS?" When our CTO tried to explain why we'd chosen a different approach, the investor interrupted again. He said that in American tech culture, interrupting shows you're engaged and thinking critically. Apparently, this active listening technique was taught at Stanford Business School and proved that participants were intellectually invested in the conversation. He interrupted 6 more times in 20 minutes. We went with a different investor. My wife works for a pharmaceutical company in Jakarta. An American executive visited to finalize a distribution agreement. At a formal dinner with our board members, he showed up 15 minutes late and didn't apologize. Indonesian business culture values punctuality as a sign of respect, especially when meeting with senior executives. He walked in mid-conversation, sat down and said sorry, got caught up on a call with New York. Then he explained that, in American business culture, being slightly late signals you're in demand and managing multiple priorities. CEOs who arrive exactly on time look like they don't have enough going on. He cited a study from a leadership book claiming that Fortune 500 executives average 12 minutes late to meetings because they're optimizing their schedules. Our board members exchanged glances. The deal collapsed within a week. I'm a consultant in Kuala Lumpur. An American CEO hired me to help him understand why his Malaysian partnerships kept failing. At our first meeting, he handed me his business card with one hand while checking his phone with the other. In Malaysia and across most of Asia, business cards are exchanged with both hands as a mark of respect. You're supposed to examine the card carefully before putting it away, acknowledging the person's credentials and position. This guy flicked his card at me like a poker chip and kept scrolling through emails. When I mentioned the two-handed exchange, he laughed and said business cards were becoming obsolete anyway. In Silicon Valley, everyone just bumps phones to share LinkedIn profiles, which is way more efficient than this ceremonial stuff. Read an article about how paper business cards would be extinct by 2025, so clearly Malaysians were behind the curve. I recommended he hire someone else for the consulting work. I manage a restaurant in Shanghai. An American business group came in for a client dinner they were hosting for a Chinese manufacturing firm. The American CEO insisted on ordering for the entire table without consulting anyone. In China, the host usually asks guests for preferences and orders a variety of dishes for sharing, showing consideration and generosity. This guy just pointed at the menu and said, "We'll take 8 orders of the Kung Pao chicken." When I suggested a more varied selection, he said, "Americans prefer decisive leadership, and that indecisiveness about food choices signals weak management skills." He'd read that effective CEOs make snap decisions in under 3 seconds, and menu deliberation was a waste of cognitive resources. The Chinese executives sat through the meal in silence and left early. The partnership never materialized. My sister works at a private club in Manila. An American executive booked a dinner meeting with Filipino business partners. When the food arrived, he immediately started eating without waiting for anyone. Filipino dining etiquette emphasizes collective starting, especially when hosting or being hosted in formal settings. The eldest or most senior person typically begins the meal. This guy just grabbed his fork and dug in while still talking about quarterly projections. When someone gently mentioned waiting for everyone's food, he said Americans eat efficiently to maximize meeting time. Apparently, Jeff Bezos made Amazon employees eat at their desks during working lunches to save 12 minutes per person per day. He'd calculated that waiting for everyone's meal added unnecessary downtime that could be spent discussing business strategy. His Filipino partners excused themselves after the appetizer. I work at a hotel in Hanoi. An American CEO was hosting Vietnamese partners for a business dinner. When the waiter poured tea, the American immediately started drinking and talking. In Vietnamese culture, there's often a brief moment of acknowledgement when drinks are served, especially at formal business dinners. You wait for others, make eye contact, sometimes offer a slight nod. This guy took a sip mid-sentence and kept going with his PowerPoint presentation. When I later mentioned the custom, he said American business culture prioritizes content over ritual. He'd attended a seminar where they taught that successful executives use every minute of face time for substantive discussion rather than symbolic gestures. Apparently, American companies close deals 30% faster than Asian firms because they skip the formalities. The Vietnamese partners didn't sign the contract. I'm a server at an upscale restaurant in Bangkok. An American businesswoman brought Thai clients for dinner. She kept calling me over every few minutes to modify orders, add items, change requests. Thai dining culture typically involves ordering once with thoughtfulness, showing respect for the kitchen and service staff. This woman treated the meal like a brainstorming session, calling me back 6 times to adjust things. When I brought the modified dishes, she complained about how long they took. She explained that in America, customers can change their minds anytime because the customer is always right and service should be infinitely flexible. She'd read about how American restaurant culture empowers consumers through choice and that restaurants limiting modifications were controlling and outdated. The Thai executives looked increasingly uncomfortable. I heard later they canceled their follow-up meetings. I drive for a car service in Taipei. An American CEO hired me for a week of meetings across the city. On the first day, he insisted I should be able to drive him anywhere in 15 minutes because the city's not that big. Taipei has over 2.5 million people with complex traffic patterns that vary by time of day. When I explained that his 9 a.m. meeting across town would need 45 minutes, he got irritated. said American executives optimize their schedules down to 5-minute intervals, and that Asian cities should improve their infrastructure. He'd read that American metro areas have superior traffic flow due to grid systems, and that Taipei's roads were clearly poorly planned. He kept insisting 15 minutes was enough until we sat in traffic for an hour. He blamed me for not knowing alternate routes. My uncle manages logistics for a shipping company in Ho Chi Minh City. An American executive called about delivering equipment to multiple Vietnamese cities. He kept referring to distances in miles and saying things like it's only 200 miles should take 3 hours max. Vietnam uses kilometers, and more importantly, road conditions vary dramatically between highways and rural routes. When I converted his estimates and explained realistic timelines, he said I was padding the numbers. In America, trucks average 65 miles per hour on interstates, and he couldn't understand why Vietnamese logistics would be any different. He'd used Google Maps driving estimates, which clearly showed shorter times, and I mentioned that Google's data doesn't account for local road conditions, weather delays, or customs at province borders. Suggested I wasn't familiar enough with modern logistics software. His equipment arrived 4 days late because he scheduled everything based on American highway speeds. I worked the front desk at a business hotel in Chengdu. An American CEO checked in and immediately complained that nobody spoke perfect English. In Chengdu, a city of over 16 million in central China, English is less common than in coastal business hubs. Our staff speaks functional English for hotel services. He demanded to know why we hadn't hired native English speakers and said that any serious international business hotel should staff accordingly. He explained that English is the language of global commerce and that Chinese hotels catering to Western executives were doing themselves a disservice. He'd read that Asian countries were losing foreign investment because of language barriers. When I offered to arrange a translator for his business meetings, he said real international business people shouldn't need translators because everyone should just learn English. His Chinese partners ended up conducting meetings at their own office with their own translators instead. I'm a translator in Osaka. An American executive hired me for a week of meetings with Japanese manufacturers. Before the first meeting, he told me to keep it brief and translate his points in 30 seconds or less because Japanese business culture supposedly values efficiency. Japanese business translation often requires careful word choice to convey respect levels, context, and proper formality. Rushing destroys the nuance. When I took time to translate properly, he kept interrupting me, saying I should be faster. He explained that American interpreters work in real time, and that consecutive translation is outdated. He'd watched a TED Talk about simultaneous interpretation being the future, and couldn't understand why. I wasn't using an earpiece system. The Japanese executives grew increasingly uncomfortable with his impatience. After 2 days, they requested meetings without him present, just me and their team. I run a co-working space in Yangon. Last week, an American tech founder gave a talk about disrupting traditional business hierarchies in Myanmar. She spent 40 minutes explaining why Burmese companies should eliminate seniority systems, adopt open plan offices, and implement peer review promotions. I had slides with data from San Francisco startups showing increased productivity. The audience of local business owners sat silently through the entire presentation. During Q&A, one person asked how these changes would work in a culture where respect for elders is foundational to society. She said cultures evolve, and that clinging to hierarchy was holding Asian businesses back from competing globally. She'd calculated that if every Asian company adopted American management structures, regional GDP could increase by 14%. Nobody asked another question. After she left, 3 of the business owners told me they'd never seen someone so confidently wrong about such fundamental cultural principles. One of them said the most impressive thing about the presentation was her absolute certainty that 45 minutes of slides could override 4,000 years of cultural values. I just nodded and started setting up chairs for the next event.